Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, we get to talk about state politics today. I am just as delighted as one can possibly be. How are you?
I'm doing good. We've discussed ways to expand the show. What can we talk about that's just not sports related? And I was like, Tom, why don't we go state politics? They say all politics are local. But let's prove it. Let's really just dive into state politics and just give it the old Buckeye Weekly try. And people are already tuning out. They've unsubscribed. But this is actually a show that is relevant to Ohio State fans. So very relevant. The NIL bill, name, image, and likeness, was derailed on Thursday. Basically, here's what happened. If you're not quite up to speed, so the NIL bill goes through the Senate with a vote of 33-0. Then it passes to the House. The House committee, I guess, there's a committee before it gets to the House. Like, this is all stuff I know nothing about, and I have to read and learn. But that, like, the House committee was like a 11-1 or 12-1 vote, so it's going to pass through the House once it gets to it. And so things are going swimmingly. And it gets to the House on Thursday, and then a representative adds an amendment to the bill that is not nearly as popular as the NIL bill. All heck breaks loose. There's arguing on both sides about, first you have to vote to add the amendment, and then you have to vote on the bill with the amendment. So the amendment, which was a ban on transgender athletes in high school sports, which is attached to name, image, and likeness, because I don't know why, other than the fact that you throw something that isn't as popular onto something super popular, hoping that it all goes swimmingly, except that it did not go swimmingly. So, yesterday I tuned into the Ohio State channel. You can see it in my background. This is what I was watching to see how the vote's going to go, the name, image, and likeness. And by the time I tune in, this lady behind me is discussing menstrual cycles and how the loss of carbohydrates at that point creates like the craving for chocolate, and this is a competitive disadvantage. And I'm thinking the entire time, like, where's the name, image, and likeness room? I must have entered a different room. Is this the wrong Zoom? Because I was here for something about college sports that was going to go through super swimmingly. And then somebody else gets up and he gives his background about how forever he's been a roller derby announcer, and roller derby's like a very inclusive sport. And I'm just like, what in the world? And the whole time I'm watching this, I'm just picturing Ryan Day doing the same thing, and seeing this name, image, and likeness. It got completely derailed, because once this amendment gets added, July 1st goes out of the picture. There is no emergency clause to have it enacted. And so how angry, how defeated, what do you think is Ryan Day going through as he is watching this?
Ryan Day is wondering when Kevin Warren got elected to the Ohio House of Representatives is, I think, my question, my first thought. Yeah. I mean, Gene Smith came out. They had the press conference for this bill at Ohio State with Gene Smith and Niraj Antani, who is the guy who introduced the bill in the first place. Ohio State does not come out and make like real public endorsements of bills very often. That's just something as a public institution you don't really do. They really came out as strongly in favor as they possibly could. Ryan Day went and testified before the Senate. He wasn't at camp one day a couple weeks ago and was like, oh, where's Ryan Day this afternoon? And then he was testifying in front of the state Senate. He testified in front of the state Senate again last week, along with Gene Smith and Cardale Jones, in front of the state House. Again, strongly in favor of this bill. Really, this is important. We need to get this through. And to see it just get blown up over something that's like completely unrelated, just like parliamentary nonsense, to just tack it onto something else like that is unrelated. It really makes you have faith in our public institutions that everything is operating the way it should. And like, what? I can't. I mean, I'm sure Ryan Day is not super, super, super well versed on the ins and outs of the state political system and how things actually work. So I'm sure he was kind of having the same response that everyone else did, which was, what? What? And yeah, I got home last night and I had a DM from someone with a Kent Brockman quote with about, how, democracy doesn't work. Democracy will never work. And it was like, oh Lord, what is this about? But I got that before I got the context, and it didn't take me long to figure out the context. And I'm sure that's about where Ryan Day was mentally last night as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm just watching this, and it's just as a sports person watching this, I got so, it's not that I felt dirty. I just felt so defeated and just so like hopeless. And like I could feel like my soul leaving my body, and I had to like grab it, like, no, you get back in there. If I have to watch this, you do too. And you leave it, and it's like after it was all over, I'm just walking around like I could not imagine having to cover this stuff and still remain like hopeful. Or I assume it's like the crime scene photography people. It's just every day is just misery, and just you see no hope, and it can really, really wear on you. Or but I'm sure you have to just distance yourself from it and cover it like a professional, which more power to them, because that's not something I would apply for, basically.
We get to cover the NCAA, which is really not all that different. It brings out kind of the same flavor of nihilism in me that the political process does. So yeah, it's not completely foreign to us, and lucky us, you get these two institutions now in the same story, the NCAA and the Ohio State House working together right now to make this all happen or not happen. And it's kind of ironic that the NCAA completely just like bumbling its way through this entire process is going to end up meaning this probably doesn't make a huge difference when all is said and done, because the NCAA has waited so long and put so much, put all its eggs in there. Well, certainly the courts will bail us out here basket. Now that hasn't happened, and they lost 9-0 in the Supreme Court in the Alston case, now they have no option other than to just say, well, we're just going to emergency just pass something early next week that will eliminate basically make that no longer, decriminalize NIL, more or less, is the version where it's like, well, we're not saying this is okay. We're just saying we're not punishing that anymore. So it's it is okay, even though we're not saying it's okay, and we're not saying it's okay permanently. We're just saying it now so that there's not the 6 states that have passed it having one set of rules and everyone else having a completely different set of rules. It's still probably going to be a little bit of a mess, but the fact that that's going to happen, assuming and again, this is the optimist in me, assuming the NCAA is not going to find a way to screw this up, which if history is any indication, they might give someone the death penalty by accident. That's a possibility. But if they do pass it through the committee, and it sounds like they are steeply incentivized to do that, then this probably ultimately doesn't make a huge difference for Ohio. But still, it would be like, you still would like to not have, you don't ever want to have to be relying in the position where it's like, well, as long as the NCAA does the intelligent thing, it'll be fine. Like, what could possibly go wrong?
Exactly. The NCAA, they'll enact a temporary fix to give them time to do the permanent fix. It reminds me of one of the seasons of The Wire where they stopped, not that drug sales were decriminalized, but they just stopped policing like entire neighborhoods and just allowed it, just told everybody, go over there to do your drugs. And it really reduced the crime rate. And so it's kind
NIL,
of like
NIL Amsterdam. I love it.
Exactly. Perfectly. So now this whole NIL thing, the NIL is basically pitching a no-hitter on Thursday, and it's like the top of the ninth or whatever, and they're facing, for some reason, 3 pitchers. They're going to be facing 3 pitchers to bat, and like all 3 just hit solo home runs, and there goes the no-hitter, there goes the shutout, and now you're down 3-2. And so like just the level of failing on that end. Think of it as Ohio State is up on Michigan by 1 point, and they're fourth quarter. They're in victory formation. Ohio State is going to take a knee at, say, like, midfield. They're up by 1 point against Michigan, and CJ Stroud just keeps backing up while he's trying to take this knee all the way into the end zone, and it takes a knee in the end zone, and now that's a safety, and you've lost by 1. That is basically what happened. So now, what happened then? The House bill went to the Senate Thursday night, and the Senate looks at the amendment and they're just like, "LOL, no." And they attached their NIL language to a veterans ID bill, and then also attach a sports gambling bill that the House didn't like to this same bill as amendments, and they voted through on that, and now that's going to go to the House. The House can't amend it. They just have to vote for it or against it. The House has issues with sports gambling that we need committees, we need this or that. So there's no way this is moving quickly. But I do think some of the lead has been buried regarding the sports books coming to Ohio. I mean, that's a very good thing that we could see in 2022. But so if that fails, then there's a possibility they could roll in the NIL language to the state budget, or which just happens to, have a deadline of June 30th. So while the NIL could have just flown through and then they could get to the next order of business, that amendment gets thrown on it, and now it just grinds everything to a halt. And I go back to, it was exactly 1 month earlier, May 24th, when Niraj Antani and Gene Smith, had that press conference explaining the bill. And Antani said, when he was asked, like, what happens if it doesn't pass? And he said, it will pass. And now I'm just thinking, like, I'm devastated, because if we can't believe something a politician tells us, who can we believe?
Yes, Tony, there is an Ohio State House. Yes. it is. Yeah. Let's all take a deep cleansing breath together.
The good news is, Tom, is I don't even have to cover this anymore, because once that Nigerian prince gets back to me, I am out of here.
Yeah, there you go. This is all, everything's coming up, Tony, now. That's good. Yeah. This is one of these things that I think ultimately this isn't going to matter. And ultimately this is just going to be this like really stupid subsection or subchapter of this whole story. But again, you're putting your faith now in the NCAA to do this and do this correctly. I think Ohio would prefer to have a law on the books that affirmatively says this. I'm sure they would strongly prefer that it went into effect on an emergency basis on July 1st, so that there's no delay. If they can pass it, I mean, it seems, again, I am not like a state political reporter, but it seems pretty important that they pass the state budget by the end of the month. So that seems like something that if they can attach it, like, okay, that's going to go through presumably. So that's probably not something, but then is someone else going to attach something else to that? Like, are we going to be back in square one? Like, Tony, which institution do you want to put your faith in right now? The state government or the NCAA? I mean, only one of them needs to get this right to solve the problem in the short term. It would be helpful for the Ohio State program and all the other schools in Ohio if the State House could get this right as well. But we don't want to ask too much of people.
You're asking me, would I put my faith in the State House or the NCAA? And I'm thinking, like, how about the Legion of Doom? Like, Lex Luthor and all of those guys. At least they're brilliant. They're smart. Like, they'll lead us to something. This whole thing it's just so disappointing. But also, as you said, it's essentially all for naught. And so even if this does get passed, though, it still wouldn't go into effect for like 90 days. But with the NCAA having their temporary fix, the Ohio law coming into it, it shouldn't negatively impact Ohio State's recruiting unless somebody is like, well, it can impact Ohio State's recruiting because the recruits aren't going to be there. Everything will be in line by the time they get here. So don't worry about that. And I think there's going to be no transfers because of this, because the NCAA is going to have their temporary fix, and by the time they'll basically, the way I'm figuring it, they'll leave it up to the schools, like, to operate and do what they want to do, because Ohio State has everything set up, so they'll just be able to operate like they are going to, as if this is going to pass on July 1st, because the NCAA isn't going to punish anybody for it. And the entire point of the bill was to make it illegal for the NCAA to punish for it. So if the NCAA is like, we're not going to punish for it, then everybody gets what they want. The NCAA, after years and years and years of wanting what's best for the players and hoping that somebody would do something about NIL, now they have just swung in like the heroes they are, and are going to save the day, save us from the politicians who couldn't do it. And I think, Tom, what this does, it gives the NCAA a lot of good credit with America, and it shows them that they are for the kids and for the athletes and for America.
We try and keep the show family friendly, so I'm just not going to address any of that directly. And instead, I'm going to take a complete right turn and say one thing I'm interested in seeing is, what does this do in terms of if the Ohio thing doesn't pass and we're just on like NCAA Amsterdam for a while? What does this do to what was supposed to be a restriction on Ohio State and everyone in the state of Ohio not being able to endorse alcohol and marijuana and gambling and all that kind of stuff? Does that mean that now they can? There was supposed to be a 2-week waiting period where they have to get something approved by the school. That was written into the law. Well, now if the law is not the law and the NCAA doesn't have something in place like that, what does that mean? Is that now just an athletic department policy? And how enforceable is that? I mean, there's a whole bunch of questions in here that, like, this is ultimately going to work out, but this is going to make everyone's lives a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I'm sure Gene Smith did just the head desk thing yesterday. Like, what? Like, this was put on a tee for you guys to not screw up, and now someone else has screwed up, and it's going to make their lives much more difficult and much more complicated than they probably needed to be. That's I think probably the more direct fallout, and I don't know the answers to those questions yet, and that's something that will probably depend on what exactly the NCAA does. I think their committee was supposed to meet on Monday next week. So we may know the answer by next Monday, but I mean, there's just so much stuff here that this could have been like relatively clean and easy and straightforward, and instead it's like, well, now everything's even more complicated than it probably needed to be. And there are a bunch of schools where, I'm sure, I think Ohio State is probably as on the ball with this as anyone, but there are schools in other states that did not have laws, pending, that now the NCAA is just going to make this change on Monday, and then like Thursday, all these schools are just have to be ready to deal with it. Like whatever they're going to come out with, they've got functionally like a week of notice, and probably less with the specifics before they have to actually deal with this stuff on their own. Yeah, they knew it was coming, but to just like slap it on all of these schools across the country in less than a week, like, I mean, it is the chronic NCAA mismanagement of literally everything. And it's like, well, Mark Emmert has just taken, the entire messy house and just like shoved it in the closet. Like, okay, and close the door. Now it's not my problem anymore. Like, well, someone's going to open that door, and then they've got to deal with all the crap that comes pouring out. So, he has shoved all the crap in the closet, closed the door, walked away with his whatever $3 million a year check, and like, well, I've done my job. Now you guys figure it out.
Like I said, save the day. The idea of this happening for schools that haven't been preparing for it. Like, I don't know what's going on in the state of Arizona, but I'm like, imagine Arizona State right now, which is on fire with the NCAA, and I'm sure everybody there is totally consumed with that. And now they've got this, and the athletes are like, all right, we're going to get name, image, and likeness. And it's like, Arizona State is a house on fire right now, and somebody is trying to drop off a new couch. Like, all right, where do you want the couch? It's like, just leave it outside. We're on fire here. We don't want a new couch in here. And so there's a lot of, I think, but if you're caught off guard at this point, it's kind of your fault, because you've known this is coming. If we're going to blame the NCAA for sitting on their heels, if that's actually the right terminology, then we can't just, we also have to blame schools if they're not prepared for this, because they know this is coming.
They know this is coming, but I think they don't know the specifics. And there's, I mean, like all the policy stuff I just talked about, are they going to have to adapt? Are they going to have people specifically? Are they going to be required to have people who monitor their stuff? Or is this going to be, you don't need to monitor anything and everything just goes straight to the players? Do they have to have LLCs in this, under the NCAA rule? Is that just up to the schools? There's a bunch of different, what's the relationship with agents? Can players work with attorneys or representatives or agents of some kind to secure these deals? If they can they be NFL licensed agents or NBA licensed agents or do they have to be attorneys who are not licensed as, someone who's in a law firm with someone who's an NBA licensed or an NFL licensed agent? Can you go with someone who's, in the same firm, but not who isn't the licensed agent themselves? There's all these complicating factors here that, to fans in general, probably don't matter at all. And you're probably not thinking about them, but this is all the crap they actually have to deal with behind the scenes. And the big point right now is they don't actually know the answer to those questions I don't think the NCAA has come out and said anything. Now, if the NCAA just comes out and says, yeah, it's legal, do whatever you want. Like, that would go against literally everything the NCAA has done or said at any point in history. So I find it hard to believe they're going to do that. I think they're going to probably try and put some kind of guardrails on it, but without knowing what those guardrails are, it's hard for these schools to have this stuff really prepared specifically. And now you're asking them to do that on, between 3 and 7 days notice. That is not setting yourself up for success or for a smooth launch of this. And, that's the people who, certain stuff rolls downhill, put it that way. And that stuff is going to roll downhill from the NCAA to these individual schools. And not every athletic department is Ohio State and has the, amount of manpower and attorneys and everything else to just throw at this problem. So you're making big problems for a lot of different people across the country because you chose not to address this until the last possible second. And, in the state of Ohio, because the state House and Senate couldn't get their stuff together and get this through. Now that's their, that would have solved the Ohio State problem. They would have known exactly what the parameters were. Now that's not an option either.
The good news is they've got 5 days, so they'll get something done. I wonder if they just take all of the existing bills, even the ones that haven't passed yet, and as a baseline, find the common denominators of each of these bills as like happy mediums for their temporary fix and go with that, because there's a lot of minutia, like you said, like NFL agents and, can you tobacco, can you do alcohol? Can you do a competing brand from your school? Can, CJ Stroud endorse Reebok? And there's all kinds of intellectual property. Can you use the school's intellectual property? No, and this and that. And so I wonder if there's just all of that they look for it, see what all of these schools, the states have put in there, and just look for the easiest and best quick solution. Like basically what they're looking for, Tom, is the strongest coat hanger to then hold up their exhaust, pipe on their car. And they don't want something thin. Certainly don't want a plastic one. They want a nice, strong, like 1972 coat hanger that they can, the kind that's even hard to like wrap and twist, that sort of thing. That's what they're looking for here. I mean, to me, we keep saying it's going to happen. This is one of those things where since you have to get it done, it will get done. Now, it's going to be a pain getting to this point. Although, could we see something where maybe they're like, we'll set our deadline for August 1st, just so we can get through all of this talking. And that a month doesn't really set everybody else back terribly. Because it does, as we said, it doesn't really affect recruiting. And if somebody commits between that time, it's like, that it has nothing to do with, like, they're not making any money from it. It makes, Ohio State's players can't make money for that month. Does that really, is that something that the NCAA is going to be okay with. But reading that memo from Mark Emmert, it sure seems like that's not even in the cards. It's July 1st. This needs to be done. That way everybody is on the same footing. So it doesn't even seem like they're going to give themselves extra time, probably because behind the scenes they've been working on this in terms of it's something that they've known for a while what it would take to get done. It's just they didn't want to do it, but they know how to do it. They just didn't want to because of what it means for them.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. I'm like, you would assume that an organization that big would be, have this, at least that buttoned up, and at least know, like, hey, this is probably going to happen. You probably have to have it. But I don't know if I'm willing to give them 100% of the benefit of the doubt there. I mean, it is the NCAA, and it's just, I have watched them fail in so many different ways over the years that it is hard to justify saying, oh, well, I mean, certainly these are adults making large amounts of money. Certainly they will have this handled. This has been an extremely obvious problem that has been coming down the tracks for years. And yet here we are 5 days out and hasn't been handled yet. I mean,
maybe Tom.
And this has been something that, I mean, I've been talking about this on the Morning Scoop for, I think I did a show last year at some point. Like, this has been like really obvious that this is California in 2019, I think, passed a bill that said 2023. And then I think Florida passed one sometime like last summer, probably, that said July 1st, 2021. Like, this has been the date for like a year. So even if they were completely head in the sand until that moment, like, this is like, you remember the documentary Waiting for Superman? And it's like, well, someone will come and save me. Looking around, like, Mark Emmert looking around his office, like, where's Superman? He needs to come and save me because I have to. We need to. This can't happen. I don't want to have to solve this. Like, just can't somebody else do it? There's the question. Can't somebody else do it? And here we are, less than a week away, and there's not a policy in place. And, I'm sure they have been thinking about this. But if you've been thinking about this, you should have something ready to go. Like, this should have been approved weeks ago. I mean, you didn't need the Alston case to tell you. This was that they were waiting for the Supreme Court to be the Superman and to save them and to say, no, actually amateurism is good. And then the Supreme Court said 9-0. No, in fact, everything you believe is a lie. So, that came out on Monday. So, okay, but how have you not had call an emergency meeting? Like, your board of governors can meet sometime other than next Monday. Like, call an emergency meeting, get it done now, give people as much time as you possibly can. Because you waited for Superman to arrive. Superman said you lose 9-0, and now you're making it everyone else's problem.
This is why I have some faith in the NCAA, because I view what is going to happen now as their go bag. And a go bag meaning like when in television or in real life, when a criminal has to flee an area for a long period of time, they've got a go bag stash with cash and passports and, of course, a couple of guns and probably some gold bars, just because that's currency everywhere. And so I think the NCAA has probably had a go bag ready. After that 9-0 vote or whatever, Emmert is like, calls up whomever and is like, get the go bag. And that go bag being their temporary NIL fix. And so I'm thinking, okay, we get the go bag, and now we can lay this out and we can start getting this taken care of. One area of concern, though, I have, Tom, is that memo from Emmert. Like, the first paragraph, he's talking about what happened with Alston NCAA, and he mentions name, image, and likeness. And then in parentheses, he puts NIL. And my thinking is, you shouldn't have to put, like, the memo should just be able to be NIL, and all of these NCAA people should know what that means. You shouldn't have to explain name, image, and likeness. Like, if you leave that out, are there people going, what's NIL? What's NIL? Like,
I think he's just following AP style. I feel like that's AP style to put the if it's not a commonly used abbreviation, to put it in parentheses upon first use the full written out word,
correct.
Then parentheses and then you can use the acronym upon subsequent uses. I believe that's what it is. Yeah. I don't know his position in the Oxford comma, but I'm sure Mark Emmert is an AP style guy. I'm sure.
You mentioned the Oxford comma. We got to go, but I mean that could be another 30 minutes of this episode because no, we don't. Let's not go there.
Let's not touch on anything controversial. Let's just leave it to state politics. Yes, thank you.
Right. Yes, and back to this transgender thing. No. Yeah. Anything else from this, Tom? This I think the moral of the story is that everything's going to be okay, but just the fact that everything was running smoothly and then blam is, it's just unfortunate. And you think of the student athletes who have been looking forward to this, including all of the female student athletes that were going to be helped by this and their families. And now it's not quite back to square one, but it might be like square three.
It is. Yeah. It's just a little more, I think everyone had a plan for, okay, this is going to go through and this is exactly what it's going to mean. And I'm sure they had information, all their presentations have centered around this going through. And now it's like, well, okay, remember on the PowerPoint, forget everything that was on slides 2, 6, 7, 12, and 15. Those no longer apply. Everything else though, it's the same. But I mean, it's just everyone's life got slightly more complicated and slightly more annoying for no discernible reason. So that was good. That's the way to go.
Politics.
Huzzah.
I think that'll do it then. If you're good, I'm good.
We've done 5 shows this week. We've done Buckeye Daily this week. So I think we've done enough podcasts for the week. So go, Tony. I'm going to tell you what. Go ahead and take this weekend off. That's my gift to you.
So help me if you text me Saturday, like, hey, you want to do like a Sunday morning scoop? And I'll be like, you gave me the weekend off, man. You said.
I'm gonna need you to come in on Sunday too. Yeah.
All right. But yeah, it's been a good week. It's been a busy week, and I'm looking forward to another busy week of who knows, 14 shows next week. Let's do it. Let's see. Let's set more records, Tom. I'm all for it. I do actually enjoy. I know a lot of people can't say this. I do enjoy talking to you. So, that's fun. I guess let's just end it there. Thank you all for listening. Thank you guys for watching. A reminder to check out BuckeyeScoop.com. And if you're not yet a member, become a member. Also, YouTube.com/Buckeye Scoop. Subscribe, get all of our videos, podcasts, interviews with recruits. And we just talked to men's basketball assistant Tony Skinn yesterday. That video is up there as well. There's all kinds of stuff up there. So if you're a fan of Ohio State and you're a fan of watching things, boom, try it out. And we'll say goodbye now. Have a great weekend, everybody. Talk to you later.